Hi, everyone. I wanted to thank you for joining us today. My name is Glenn Howard. I'm president of the Saratoga Foundation. It's a pleasure to welcome you to this special online event that we're discussing Romania's critical and enduring role as an anchor of NATO's eastern flank. The timing could not be better. Our conversation comes at especially a very important moment. Many of you are aware that Romania has become one of the alliance's most strategically significant frontline states. Romania borders Ukraine, Moldova, and the Black Sea, and more importantly, it serves as a critical and crucial hub for NATO's deterrence posture in the East. Its importance has become even more important due to Romania's proximity to this ongoing war. We've seen Russian meddling in Romania's domestic affairs. It's been subject to repeated Russian drone overflights and intrusions into Romanian airspace. And most recently in August, we have witnessed an attack by Russian forces using uncrewed surface vehicles inside the Danube on a Ukrainian intelligence vessel that was inside Romanian territorial waters. And so we see all this going on, and nearby we also just throw in for good measure neighboring Moldova, where Russian interference remains rampant. Just this month, Romania hosted Dacian Fall, a major NATO exercise, and brought together 5,000 troops. It brought advanced systems from across the alliance and experimented with new technologies being shaped by the lessons from the war in Ukraine. The message was very clear from this exercise that NATO is reinforcing and demonstrating its readiness on the eastern flank. But the most important part that often goes underexplored in our discussion of Romania is Romania's Ramstein of the East. Air power is very critical in this part of the world, and its air base there in Romania called MK Air Base is really one of the best and most advanced air bases basically east of Ramstein. So this is very critically important. And Romania remains a very important pillar of NATO's strategy in the Black Sea, and especially because no one can get in and out of the Black Sea, air power is more important than ever as NATO forces are not unable to enter the Black Sea due to the Montreux Convention. So all this said, Romania is a central pillar of regional defense cooperation. And MK Air Base not only serves as an important pillar of our security, but it's also a very important staging area for the United States. As we witnessed during the U.S. invasion of Iraq, over 15,000 American forces were grouped in Romania at MK Air Base. It's a staging ground for American operations into Eurasia. This is very, very critically important. So today we're very fortunate and very happy to have with us some of the leading Romanian defense and security experts around who will help us understand these developments and assess the implications of shifting U.S. and European roles in the region, explore what Romania's future contribution to regional stability will look like. Our first speaker will be Iulian Berdila. He's a lieutenant general in the Romanian Army. He's chief of staff for operations and planning. He was appointed as deputy chief of defense for operations and training in April 2023. He's a fluent speaker of English. Most importantly in my book is that he's a graduate of not only the Romanian Land Forces Academy, but he's a graduate of and has a master's of military arts and science degree in theater operations from the prestigious U.S. Army School of Advanced Military Studies, otherwise called as SAMS. This is where they call the home of the Jedi Knights. This is the place where the key and best and most prominent military planners in the U.S. Army and from around the world graduate from, and we're delighted that General Berdila will be participating with us. Our second speaker is George Scutaro, who is the CEO of the New Strategy Center in Bucharest, Romania. Mr. Scutaro is a former presidential advisor for national security and one of Romania's leading experts on Romanian defense and security issues, and someone Saratoga frequently partners with, and we're delighted that George is going to be commenting today. Last but not least, from all the way from Florida, we have Phil Breedlove, former Supreme Allied Commander Europe, who has an undying passion for all things related to Romania and everything east of Ramstein, I would say. But he's also, more importantly, a member of the board of the Saratoga Foundation. We're delighted that he's here today to share his comments and views on the enduring and critical importance of Romania in the East. So, General Berdila, I just want to let you begin your presentation and if possible, talk about the Dacian exercises, Dacian Fall, and discuss kind of what is Romania's enduring and critical important role from your perspective and from a land forces perspective to NATO and U.S. security in the East. Sir.
Well, thank you so much for, first of all, for the opportunity to come so close to U.S. from the Black Sea region using our connection today. And thank you for mentioning SAMS. Every time I tell people I did 2 years in Leavenworth, they think it's the prison. It's not the school. Very, very good times for me for my personal career, but also for the team that we developed internationally, and then with the U.S. colleagues there in Leavenworth, and then later on in the Carlisle and the War College. But coming back to the subject, before getting into the Dacian Fall, which is kind of like a zoom in event, very critical for the region, let me a little bit zoom out and put some light in what is the context in the strategic part of Europe and also the Black Sea region. There's some adaptation in terms of threats, vulnerabilities, risks, but also opportunities. And this is what I call the cross of coherence between one vertical, Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, Turkey, and then down to the south, but also between the Black Sea and the Balkans. And then this cross puts the spot of developing some of the variables, what we all know called some black swans. And I can tell you some of the black swans are becoming gray or even white. Okay, so that's a first thing to consider. Romania sits in this region that is very much across not only a hub of different vectors of, like I said, threats, vulnerabilities, and risks. The second thing would be to what is the adaptation that we took, and what is the consistency that we committed to in the region. Basically, it was NATO. It was SHAPE, introducing or moving from the graduated response plans into the regional plans. So very much a difference in that is the consolidation of the concept of operation. First of all, the multi-domain operations is more mature. SHAPE directed allies to really integrate and produce measures of how to be effective and executable. So SHAPE developed, the SACUR developed this executable list of criteria. And that really pushed the mechanism of operational and strategic planning into aligning the National Defense Plan. So now we completed that phase. Yesterday, the Romanian president just announced the project for public debate of the new national security strategy, which is very important. And that directs and comes together with, like I said, the synchronization between SACUR's plans and the national plans. Number two is determining what is the adaptation inside the national part of the force structure and the command structure. And we had to take that. You mentioned some of the Ukrainian lessons learned. Now, let me point out a little bit of that because that's important. We personally, and I personally believe the classics will not disappear. And what I mean by classics is fixed and rotary wing, so the air power, armor, deep fires and acquisition, logistics, the part of the CIS and this development of the AI inside that. So these are very much macro ecosystems that will remain in place. How do you add the drones as a warfighting function, as a warfighting system, especially from the lessons identified in Ukraine? That's very important. How do you integrate? Now, we all have to consider that this is a technical difference, and I underline that needs to be addressed. How do you get NATO standards into a command and control system merged with something that is non-NATO? And this is very, very much a challenge for us to become adaptive. Last but not least, another universe that Romania is looking into adaptation is as you know, the coalition of the willing. Romania participates and continues to put effort into supporting Ukraine on the way to victory. And this is also adaptive because you have to go back and relook. Hey, am I not, or I'm trying to avoid difficulties with the NATO operational planning and then the coalition willing operational planning. Have you heard about the deterrence and defense concept? The not the risk, but the challenge is how do you maintain the capabilities in the deterrence and defense NATO plan in a sum, not a deficit, with the coalition of the willing. So the nations will have to move units and capabilities, but make sure they do not create deficits in the two pools of capabilities that they develop. Let me go now into the Dacian Fall. So under the French leadership, this has been a commitment for the last 2 years to come plan, organize, and then execute this force projection package at the level of brigade in all 3 regional plans. And in Romania, this, like I said, was the case for the French lead. And of course, you have to exercise. So initially, my former position was the Chief of Staff of the Army, and we started from zero. The French Land Forces Chief. I remember we had nothing from this solution in Chinkin when we started. We managed to get the first battle group, so a battalion level task force to be integrated in starting from real life support, basing, and then the capacity to train them in Chinku, which is pretty much very much jewel for us when it comes to operations and training. So Dacian Fall came into 2 phases. Dacian Spring, which was just the part of executing phasing of that deployment forward, and then the full exercise now into the Dacian Fall. One thing to mention, it comes in convergence with other events in Romania that really produce gold of Stratcom and narrative from the region. NATO Industry Forum was here just a few days ago. You have numerous conferences and then this exercise showing up. This is what I call comprehensive deterrence. So it's not the military capability package, but it comes from different sources. Oh, by the way, energy, and we can talk later, energy for us starts to be a comprehensive deterrence source because it produces from a different domain effects into the deterrence, and this is very much important. I'll stop a little bit here, and then I'll let the others open the dialogue and the contribution, and of course questions and answers. Thank you so much.
George, what are your thoughts about everything that he said, and where is Romania going forward in terms of being this anchor of the NATO's security in the East?
I think it's necessary to take into account the specificity of the Black Sea. First of all, it's a closed sea. We have Montreal Convention, and most probably for many years we will not see other vessels from outside the Black Sea NATO countries. Because even you'll have a ceasefire, most probably Turkey will not open the straits. And in this case, it's necessary to be more adaptive and to have in mind this asymmetric approach also assumed by Ukraine, because practically a country without fleet, Ukraine, proved capacity to destroy or damage 61 vessels, different types, different categories of Russian fleet. And I think it's necessary, especially when I'm speaking about the close seas like Black Sea or Baltic Sea, is necessary to absorb this lesson learned from Ukraine and to try to adapt our defense posture, taking into account that a symmetric approach will not work if you are is necessary to fight and or to deter Russian aggressive posture. Second, I think it's necessary to understand that we are in the middle of escalatory process from Russian side. What's happened on entire eastern flank, and not only they prove they have capacity to conduct a lot of sabotage acts, also trying to interfere in our airspace in Poland, in Romania. You mentioned this incident on 28th of August when they proved capacity to target a vessel in interior of the Danube, 24 kilometers upstream from the Danube mouth. And also because General Berdila mentioned the importance of energy. Black Sea is not an area with a lot of transit routes from from Asia, Central Asia, from Caspic area, from Caucasus, but also we have our own resources. For instance, in 2027, Romania will be the largest gas producer in EU. We have our richest perimeter in Neptune Deep, and we are in the middle of the process to build up all this critical infrastructure. And please have in mind, economic exclusive zone is not covered by Article 5 because this is not territorial water. And it's important to understand this aggressive posture from Russian side because Romania will have possibility to help Moldova, to help Balkan countries in case of a winter crisis. And also a country like Germany will start to import gas from the Black Sea in 2027, and Romania will have capacity to decrease the Russian pressure on in energy field in this part of Europe. And I'm pretty sure that Russia will try to harass to intervene in all this process. And we can see false flag operation conducted by Russians because, for instance, naval drones, Russian naval drones are very similar with Ukrainian naval drones. They have a very low radar footprint, and it's very difficult to establish the traceability in case of a false flag operation. Second, I think it's necessary for all our allies to not send wrong signals to Russians, because especially you know how important now for the President Trump is this process of negotiations to stop the war. And it's very good, this engagement coming from the United States. But in the same time, it's necessary to send to Russia strong signals, to put pressure on sanctions, to continue to show that we want peace, but not with not with concessions. And it's very important to, and most probably General Bridlov and General Berdila will discuss about how necessary is to maintain an American military footprint in Europe, because otherwise Russia will interpret this disengagement like an invitation to be more aggressive. And please have in mind, each week Russia is bombing infrastructure of Ukraine on the Danube side. We have each week intrusions in our airspace with drones. It's very difficult because Black Sea really it's a battlefield. This is the reality in this part of the world, and all time Russia is trying to push our limits, to check the limits, and trying to see how NATO will react, how Romania will react, and especially how the United States will react.
I think you raised a really good point, George, and I think there was some disconcerting news or concerning news today about the North Koreans are going to send about 10,000 men to help the Russians improve their drone production. And I think one of the questions I'll ask later, and I'll throw out there, is the kind of what were the Russians up to with this massive drone intrusion into Polish airspace? And they used Shaheeds, but they were unarmed. And so, we all look at Poland. We know there's lessons. They're applying these everywhere else. You're also conducting drone intrusions also on a smaller scale into Romania. And that's something I want to ask later too about this gray area of warfare, which certainly is the Russians keep constantly probing. And so trying to test this issue. And so I'll turn the floor over now to General Breedlove. Sir, it's great having you here. You've listened to some of these discussions here, some of the great insights by General Berdila and George. What is on your mind when it comes to Romania now?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Glenn. And in Afghanistan, we always use the old phrase "Shona be Shona." shoulder by shoulder. And these two gentlemen, every time I've been to Romania, they have been pushing the plow just like I have. And I really appreciate the efforts of General Bodilla and George. These are folks who get it right, and in their remarks today, I stand with every one of them. I'd like to approach just a couple of brief remarks based on more of a theater commander sort of approach to all of this business about what Romania means to me and to any SACEUR and to anyone who's leading an effort to hold the line in the East in Europe. I like to think of two things every time I think of Romania. And at first, it's the people, and second, it's the place. If we look backwards as Americans, and I would offer if we all look backwards as Europeans and Americans, we see that Romania, the Romanian people, and the attitude of this great country has always been pro-Western and very American oriented since the fall of the wall. And so this is a group of people that we can count on. They are not going to wilt in the face of the kind of pressure that Russia likes to mount. We see mounting now in Georgia, and we see mounting also in Moldova. And then in the infamous words of almost every American person who deals with selling homes, land, or property or whatever, these realtors always say location, location, location. Romania is the key location in the South, especially as it relates to the Black Sea. Everything that we as Americans believe need to happen in the Black Sea, and I will offer also from my experience as the SACEUR, everything that NATO wants to see happen in the Black Sea revolves around in some way Romania. You mentioned MK base, it's even more than that. But the fact of the matter is this is key and incredibly important terrain to every objective we have in holding the line in the East. And that leads into the very distinct discussion about infrastructure. When I was the SACEUR, I told Romanians every time I was there, I have been in Romania more than any other country in the alliance. Part of that is because every time I went to Afghanistan or came home from Afghanistan, we would drop into MK bases. We moved people either in to the conflict or move people out of the conflict. And if you look back at both the movement of people, troops, and supplies in, but even more demonstratively, if you look at the withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan, MK base was the key hub. And so these things are demonstrated. This is not just words. This is not verbiage to throw out there to argue for supporting Romania. The facts are that Romania has already proven its importance to the alliance and to the United States as we try to develop power in the East to hold back the Russians. And now I'd like to just kind of turn to a little bit of a future thought. And both of these great speakers have already mentioned this in one way or the other, but the commitment of NATO, and as importantly, the commitment of the United States to Romania is absolutely essential. When Mr. Putin looks across the Black Sea from his dachas in the east there, the east side of the sea, he needs to see the American flag. He needs to see the American flag. I'm not going to say it a third time, but imagine that I would say it a third time. Okay? Of course, he also needs to see the NATO flag. And Dacian Fall is an amazing example of NATO commitment, meaning European NATO nations' commitment to Romania. But now I will say it a third time. When he looks this direction, he needs to also see the American flag, because the commitment of NATO troops in the way that this exercise just demonstrated, from high tech to on the ground ground forces. It was extremely good. And that commitment and U.S. commitment in the same way equals deterrence. You know, we always talk about deterrence, and people say, well, how many more tanks is it going to take to deter, or this, that, or the other? And General Brodillo will tell you from his schoolwork that it's not the number of tanks or airplanes. Deterrence is in the mind of the deterred. And what is going to deter Mr. Putin is American and NATO commitment. And Mr. Putin understands how valuable the Romanian geography and the Romanian people and the Romanian military forces are to this alliance and holding in the Black Sea. And so we need to keep focused on that commitment, in my mind, so that we can not send the kind of bad signals that George talked about a few minutes ago, but rather send the right signals. And I'll close with saying it the fourth time. When Mr. Putin looks across the Black Sea, he needs to see the American flag as well as the NATO flag. Thanks for letting me chat a bit.
Bill, thank you very much. Let me ask you, for our audience, we wrote this article, you and I, in National Interest several months ago, and we were discussing the importance of MK Air Base. So for our people watching the video today, briefly summarize what you see is the difference of the MK Air Base in Romania and Ramstein, and why do they call it Ramstein of the East, and just kind of summarize that so people can understand its importance.
So in a very brief moment, the first couple of times I landed there, what we saw was an amazing example of expeditionary air power, because the alliance and specifically the Americans rolled in on a base that the Romanians were trying to do big things, and they were trying hard to provide capability to the alliance. And when the alliance and the Americans rolled in and joined side by side with the Romanians, the infrastructure of that base started going way up. My first trip there, and General Badillo will remember this, we had, everything America had there was made out of plywood on the bottom and tent material on the top. And I landed there once and the snow was blowing sideways. My C-130 had to make multiple passes to land, but we the alliance, we the Romanians, and we the Americans created expeditionary air power. We are way beyond that now. We have a first-class hub on the ground. We have immense capability of throughput, either east or west. And that hub is married to the training spaces that even go over into Bulgaria. The combination of these training spaces and where we have Marines and U.S. soldiers on the ground with other NATO troops and Romanian troops and sometimes Bulgarian troops, the nexus of this airfield and the training capabilities are really important. And then finally, if we really believe we're going to hold the line in the Black Sea, it's going to start on Romanian infrastructure.
Now, the infrastructure at MK is it equivalent, the same as Ramstein? I mean, of course, Ramstein's been in existence for half a century or more than a century. So
no, it's not, and I don't think that's what we're trying to do there. I mean, Ramstein has a throughput that is immense. Romania at MK base has an incredible throughput. It's not expeditionary anymore. This is a world-class fixed operation there, but the size is not quite the same as Ramstein. But may I tell you that they can handle anything and everything at that base that we can handle at Ramstein. It's just a matter of not quite the same throughput. And I'm not sure that that's where we want to be, but we want that base to support fighters and you know, it's air policing now. I pray that someday we'll get to air defense in Romania, not air policing. But the base is multifunctional, whereas Ramstein is more command and control and logistical throughput. MK base is a fighting base. It's going to fight. We're going to fight from there. We're going to do logistics from there. We're going to do command and control from there. And General Brodilla, correct my paper if I'm overstating here, but this is a multifunction fighting base, and it's right at the heart of the Black Sea and what we're trying to do in the Black Sea.
Phil,
if I may.
Go ahead, George. Yeah.
Okay. Romania is in the middle of the process to upgrade this air base. We spent $2.5 billion, our money, not NATO money, to invest in this base, to improve this base. And I think this base also is important for American interests, as Phil mentioned, General Brillo mentioned, because MK Air Base plays an important role for this projection of force to Middle East. Also, it's very close to South Caucasus. And I remember President Trump, together with the leaders of Armenia and Azerbaijan, had a very important role for this peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And MK Air Base is very close to the Zangezur corridor between Nakhichevan exclave and Azerbaijan through the Armenian territory. And also MK Air Base is very close to the southern part of Ukraine, where America has important interest if you are speaking about rare minerals and other important energy stuffs for American economic interest. And also it's important for the projection power to the Balkans, because Balkans in a very sensitive spot in the middle of Europe, and we still have instability in the Balkans. It is necessary to have in mind, because Russia has this ability trying to undermine America's interest in Europe. And please have in mind, we see how close became Iran and North Korea from us. Okay, because each week Russia is using North Korean missiles to bomb Odessa, and Odessa is very close to our borders. Or each week Russians are using Shahed drones, Iranian drones, okay? And I think very soon it's very possible to see some Iranian vessel in the Black Sea, because they could come from Caspian Sea using this Volga-Don canal into Azov Sea and further to the Black Sea. It's important to understand that this coalition between China, North Korea, Iran, and Russia, it's working pretty well. It's working better than Iron Pact during the World War II between Germany, Italy, and Japan. And we can see how they learn a lot. And most probably what's happened now in the Black Sea, in Ukraine, could be used by China when we are speaking about the southern China Sea and Taiwan. And I think if America is necessary to protect its interest in Asia, it's necessary also to show the interest in Europe and to maintain a good military footprint on an entire eastern flank, and not to have different approaches when we are speaking about Baltic area or Black Sea area, or to have, like today, unfortunately, 11,000 soldiers in Poland and only 1,000 soldiers in Romania, because, as I mentioned, it's not necessary to send rogue signal to Russia, because Russia could interpret it in a wrong way, this kind of approaches from Washington.
Thank you. You make some great points, George. And Gerald Brodilla, would you like to comment on that?
Well, first of all, to pick up on several very important, especially what General Breedlove said, and that's why I'm privileged every time to be with General Breedlove because you have to, and I'm sure you understand, but for our viewers, when you say SACURE, you also say EUCOM. And this power of the dual hat allows the military planning to work the transatlantic partnership per se. Okay, so it gets the planning, it gets the numbers, the figures, the capabilities aligned. MK has been it's nothing new. I was a captain when Montgomery Meigs came to visit as part of the land forces to visit some training areas. So this is nothing just because of Russia. And the viewers have to understand that it's time for Romania to ask the question. It's not what U.S. can do for us, what Romania can do for U.S. So what is the benefit for U.S. as this strategic agility hub is capacitating? So it's not just budgets and money, but what do I represent for U.S. in terms of opportunity to maintain the strategic agility? And this is very much crucial. So since the last 20 years, MK has been capacitating. One, two, it is interconnected. You have the ports. You have Constanza, okay, which is a port of huge capacity in the Black Sea, and then you have the Danube River, which, oh, by the way, takes you all the way down into as a mobility corridor into deep Europe. So is it like Ramstein? No. Does it have a lot of functions in Ramstein? Yes. But this strategic agility is probably one difference or one addition to what Ramstein has and connectivity. Last but not least, I fully agree with General Breedlove. Deterrence is in the mind of deterrent. But also, it has to produce some sort of frustration for the aggressor. The frustration that we look for is to say, God, I shouldn't let them do that. Now I can do this. Okay, so he's limited, and sometimes I call it in terms of addressing what toxic Russian strategy puts into resources is how do you produce constriction for Russia? What is that suffocating of resources for Russia to say, I can't breathe internally, and also I can't project power because and MK is a crucial constant for that. Number three, George mentioned this again. This is a multi-vector. You can go Middle East, you can go Balkans, you can go Russia, you can go coherence with Poland. So this is very agile. And the presence, and I know we'll probably address it later. It's not always about the numbers, it's what the numbers do. What the numbers effectively are ready to do. Okay. I think we're beyond the kind of like just an initial entry force. No, this is a capacity that is putting capabilities, and not only U.S. The enhanced air police. Oh, by the way, SACURE announced Eastern Sentry, which is kind of like the pre-phase to that air defense in the Black Sea. This is a lot of other allies coming into MK. Last but not
least. Excuse me, can you just comment on what Eastern Sentry, is that what you mentioned it? What is that?
You mentioned the attack, the Russian attack in Poland, and I was in Riga, part of the Steadfast Pinnacle, one of the top exercises for NATO leaders when this happened. And SACURE came addressed this, and very much after the 2 days, he announced the Eastern Sentry. Eastern Sentry being an integrated air police NATO mission that would be much more consolidated than what used to be. Then some differences in command and control. They're technical, but pretty much he wants more effectiveness of the air police and air defense missions between the Baltic and the Black Sea. So he's kind of like lining up this air effects list that he wants to do. So he wants to be more active. He is SACURE to produce that deterrence for the Russians.
Is that because do you think the Russians have discovered seams in our air defense and air policing using these quote unquote unarmed Shahed drones? I mean, is that kind of what they're trying to do, you think?
Well, again, looking back, how can I help U.S. understand this? Because this is not just for me. So we started from this and said, look, okay, Ukraine war is just part of the larger Russian strategy. Okay, this is up north. It's going all the way down to the Arctic. It's going to the mainland and continent of Europe, but also going to the Mediterranean. So this is an encircled strategy that is much deeper than just Ukraine. To zoom in then to your question is, he's trying to create fissures, cracks into the first line and getting into this trap of the first trench being, oh, it's everything about what Russia does in Ukraine and the also the partners in the Black Sea. No, we need to look deeper because why? Because the U.S. will not have all the resources necessary to commit to every single micro operational environment against the Russians. And we need to contribute to that, we allies and partners. So that's why, yes, we focus on Ukraine. We have this coherence of NATO, but we also try to understand what is Russia trying to do, not this year, but the next 2 or 3 years to the transatlantic partnership. Last but not least,
go ahead.
That suffocating strategy. Romania has been very vocal with other allies since probably 2010 about the Black Sea. There was some delay into how the allies saw the Black Sea. Now, this is much more mature today. I think we all came to realize, yes, now this is the time to commit all the resources and having the infrastructure and the capacities of examples like MK. That's what we wanted to do. Over, but not out.
Phil, you had a 2-finger interjection.
Yeah,
there,
I just want to violently agree with what General Badilla just said. I want to add now a little personal. This is my opinion. Okay, I'm not stating U.S. policy, but Mr. Putin understands the difference between air policing and air defense. He absolutely understands that. And if you look at the dance we did a little over a month ago, he sent airplanes into places where he knew they would not be shot down, where if he'd have sent those airplanes into Poland, Poland may have shot him down. So he sent a bunch of unmanned Shaheeds into Poland. He literally gave us a lesson in what the problem with air policing is in those attacks. And I think that you asked, what is he doing? And is he testing? Is he whatever? I think he's confirming in his mind what he faces when he comes into NATO airspace. And I applaud this change that the SACEUR is working on to change the ability of NATO to respond. I mean, for the people watching, we don't have time to explain it all here, but Google air policing rules of engagement, and then Google air defense rules of engagement, and you'll understand what Mr. Putin is exploiting.
Go ahead, sir. General Badilla, you were saying.
Well, and this is just the military component of that strategic agility opportunity for U.S. Okay, but then you move into the energy sector. Romania just has for a couple of years now the project of micro reactors. Romania maintains the part of IT and cyber developments. There are very good universities. Even education becomes important to that. So in the private sector, there are multiple companies that are working together just for that comprehensive deterrence. So again, the question we addressed into our realization of what is the U.S. strategic phase and how we can help to that is very important. And saying not, hey, I want your presence. No, let me tell you why your presence here is important for you and what I'm ready to commit to that. And I think every ally needs to look at this perspective and understanding that I go back to my war college time when I learned that there's a big strategic ghost in terms of theater strategy for U.S. How do I address 2 major theaters of war in the same time? And that's Pacific and Atlantic. And instead of instead of moving quantities, you optimize. This is a heavy space, air, maritime, meaning the Pacific, and this is a space, air, land massive in Europe. Well, what is my optimization, and how can the allies not just compensate, but again optimize? And this means, how do I set the command control force structure and the missions to my force packages to that? So yes, we do look at this perspective. We do not just go to US and say, we need this. This is not a wish list. This is something that we also want to address US and say, how can we help? And obviously, Romania is not going to go to space. I mean, we're still looking for space soldiers. We're trying to put the space command in, but those are very expensive. But the point is, what we have, especially for capacity and the enduring, like you mentioned, the critical and enduring. I would add responsible, okay? Because this is the time for Romania to come say, no, hey, we need to be able to contribute. Over but not out.
Now let me ask the question in that we were going to try to address today, and we've tried to talk about the importance of showing the flag, but the unfortunate event that occurred roughly several weeks ago was the U.S. decision to draw down the Stryker Brigade that's of 800 men that were based in Romania and bring those forces back to Kentucky. What can you say that the impact of that is, George, on how Romania looks at the region and looks at the U.S. commitment? Obviously, you're very concerned and worried about it.
Romania will continue own investments in defense because before the Article 5, it's Article 3, and each nation is responsible to defend own territory, and will do. But as I mentioned, the next 2-3 years are very sensitive in Europe, because Europe is in the middle of this process to enhance, expand military industrial complex. Our armed forces, we decide in Hague to invest more in defense, up to 3.5 direct investments and 1.5 collaterally. Romania is doing already, but on the other hand, it's necessary to understand the importance of Americans in Europe, and because you are the core of alliance. And as I mentioned, this kind of decision to recalibrate your military presence, especially in this sensitive area, like on the border of the Black Sea, to decrease the level of presence in such important place like MK Air Base, very close to Crimea, very close to the southern part of Ukraine, could send a very wrong signal to Russia.
George, let me interrupt you there. What was those 800 men that were there? What were they doing, and where were they patrolling? Were they like a tripwire force in case the Russians? Just explain to our audience that aren't familiar with what those units were doing.
Glenn, it's important. And General Berdile could explain better than me what this kind of 800 people can do in Romania. But I'm speaking about the political signal. It's a pure political signal, okay? Because frankly speaking, if you move 800 soldiers to Kentucky, that will not mean they will not have such important budgetary effect for the Pentagon's budget, okay? But as I mentioned, if you have a different approach when we are speaking about the Baltic area and the Black Sea area, you could send a wrong signal to Russia, okay, that Black Sea has not such an important place in your strategic vision. And this is wrong. And I think President Trump has to have in mind, okay, maybe for the next year, because America is in the middle of negotiation. It's in the middle of peace process. President Trump wants to have this peace agreement in Ukraine. But if you, in parallel, will send this kind of signals, it will be wrong, including for this negotiation process in Ukraine. Not only for security in the Black Sea, not only for security of Romania, but also for this peace process, very sensitive, very difficult in Ukraine.
Yes, and in short, we call that sending the wrong signal at the wrong time. Phil, you had a one-finger intervention there.
Yeah, so I just want to add on to the conversation a little bit. In my mind, deterrence, a big part of deterrence is readiness. Mr. Putin needs to look at us and see that we are ready to defend in the forward area. A big part of readiness is responsiveness. The highest form of responsiveness is to have troops on the ground. And that's what we advocate for and what we would continue to advocate for here in Romania. Now, I'm not now agreeing with the decision or supporting the decision, but the manner in which the decision is executed could make a big difference. If we are leaving the equipment and the enabling equipment and the ammunition and the stocks and everything in place so that 800 soldiers could rapidly respond and take up arms, that's a very different thing than completely removing the force and all of its equipment out. So let me just make sure nobody gets confused here. I don't support moving troops out of Romania. But if we are going to have to live with this decision, then how the decision is executed could still make a big difference in how the deterrence in the mind of the enemy is built. And so the best answer is leave the troops in place. The second best answer is make sure that this is a fall-in element kind of plan as opposed to completely remove the force. And I looked for General Badilla to grade my paper there.
Okay. Sir, General Badilla, you want to comment?
Not in my lifetime, sir. That's a legacy of leadership that I follow. So, but okay, first of all, some good. Let me put it this way: some good news of that optimization or recalibration. Romania still has Devicel, has Câmpia Turzii, which is F-16 training hub, which is huge. I mean, this is galvanizing a lot of the allies in the for training F-16 pilots. Oh, by the way, that's bridging into. I'm not an expert, but Breedlove here can actually grade me, but that's the bridge towards F-35. So this is the long-term presence and posture. Again, I'm trying to understand why would U.S. do that? And I need to understand that in very realistic terms, not in negative or positive. Russia will pick up on that. Obviously, Russia would use the symbolism to address it, to go to the public, exactly like General Breedlove said, the people and places, and say, you see, they're leaving you. Okay, so there's a part of that STRATCOM that we need to take care. But in reality, optimizing doesn't mean reducing. It's adapting to something that is developing in a different direction. Last point, you asked about the 800 soldiers. Well, mainly this was a presence, rotational presence. Okay, that means a lot of training. So from MK, they would go to different training areas and train with the Romanian troops, with other allies. So let me point out that Romania hosts on the NATO command and control or NATO force structure, multinational corps Southeast, multinational division Southeast, and multinational brigade Southeast. There is a volume and opportunity for training with U.S. troops that will certify the skills and competencies of U.S. units. So this goes back into why is my unit into Romania training? Because they're going back to readiness. They're maintaining their readiness being Romanian, not just sitting in MK. So, and my last point on the U.S. presence is what is not a minimum, what is an effective package of capabilities that flag needs to stay in for? I would say at least ISR, so the capacity to acquisition and have indicators and warning, situational awareness, early warning, then command and control. It has to be an echelon, I would say, at least above division, a DTAC that should be maintained, because that has the capacity to spread the information and also to apply some of the crisis action measures that maybe we need to take place. And then a multi-domain task force above battalion level, critical. Ideally a brigade. So I'm talking capabilities, not numbers. A brigade, why? Because they can tactically be that on-the-spot presence that is not only producing deterrence, but is ready to adapt the plans into defense if needed. So, and again, don't forget that NK, this is a multiple pivot. Maybe there are developments of stability and support operations in the Middle East. Maybe there's more to be done to support progress in the Balkans. That's the strategic agility gate for U.S. to use when needed. So again, it's not just the numbers and the withdrawn word that Russia will use as symbolism to hybridly attack the public. It's also what U.S. wants to, why they want to be here, and what is the U.S. interest to be in the rotational presence. The agility of that vector for the presence, and also that categorization of ISR, C2, and then a multi-domain task force to be ready in the Black Sea region.
Yes, that's a really good point you make about that force reflecting was a modest level of agility versus now there is no ground force agility, and that when they're there operating, it gives them more experience, maneuver. Phil,
I just wanted a quick pile on because the general brought up an important point, and it was a glancing blow, and I want to settle on it for a second. And that is what we have found in certain places in Europe, not in all, and but around the world, what we have found is when a rotational force deploys or a deployed force deploys, they consume readiness because they're focused on a mission, and so the other things they're trained to do begin to atrophy. And what we have found in the Baltics and in Romania is not that. We talked about all the training opportunities in Romania. We are not consuming readiness when our forces go to Romania. We are actually creating and sustaining readiness. And that's an important point. That's another place where, as General Badilla mentioned, he wants to show value to America of what the forces are doing there. And this is a big value to a commander. I hate deploying and then going home and have to requalify in all these missions I couldn't maintain. So creating readiness versus consuming readiness, and we have that opportunity in Romania.
And Phil, go ahead, sir, General Badilla.
Just a fast pickup on that. Think about the strategic culture too. General Breedlove mentioned the people. I can tell you the 9th Romanian Mech Brigade for the last 2 years started to have the first American football team, military. Okay, this is you have to realize. Obviously, they will not win the Super Bowl. That's not the point. The point is, how do you maintain that resilient Romanian culture of America is our friend? And this goes into the families, and it goes into exchanging customs and culture. And ask the U.S. soldiers how many mici, which is a small sausage, skinless, they ate in Romania. They can tell you it's probably one of the best recipes in the region of the Black Sea. This is very critical for not just creating deterrence, but how do you consolidate the strategic culture? What is a U.S. soldier going back and telling stories about Romania? For me, that is crucial.
And please don't forget that we share the same sand and blood in Afghanistan. Okay, 27 Romanian soldiers died in Afghanistan. Even Afghanistan was so far from Romania. and more than 100 were injured, and thousands and thousands Romanian soldiers fought and exercised together with Americans in Iraq and Afghanistan, and together we create, as General Berdele mentioned, this common culture, and it's important to maintain, to hold the line together. In Europe, as in Afghanistan, please have in mind also this example, and I remember in the last year in Afghanistan, Romania was the 5th contributor with troops in Afghanistan, supported America.
Well, that's a great point, and I would just interject that Romania has been buying American-made F-16s, and they plan to buy several squadrons of F-35s, and Patriots. So Romania is certainly buying them.
Abrams, a long list, just to increase interoperability. I remember in December, the last and the most important decision assumed by the Parliament was to approve this program of F-35. That means $6 billion to achieve 3 squadrons of F-35 for Romanian
You've heard me
forces.
say this before, George. This goes beyond interoperability. This approaches interchangeability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, you are right. You are right.
Well, on that note, I want to thank everyone today for appearing. The Saratoga Foundation is very much indebted to you. Joe Berdele, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to come and talk about how important Romania is and what you're witnessing and seeing there in the Black Sea region. George Scutaro, thank you very much for appearing. Hopefully we'll continue our cooperation. We'll be posting this event online as well. So thank you very much, Phil. Great seeing you, and we look forward to having you again.
All the best.
All the best, and thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Always a mission. Okay.
Great to see you.
Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you, Phil, Glenn, and JJ.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.